Without further ado, let me introduce Deidre Diamond. So I'll do a quick introduction for Deidre. She is the founder and CEO of CyberSN, as well as Secure Diversity. She has created one of the largest cybersecurity talent acquisition services and technology firms in the US, while focusing on cybersecurity, the talent shortage, specifically the shortage of women. Deidre's mission is to remove the pain from job searching and matching for everyone. Deidre cares tremendously about people loving where they work, and she has been working to create cultures that have high emotional intelligence skills. Deidre, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Randall. It's good to be with you all. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen when you're done sharing there. It'll give me permission. Awesome. It's great to be with you all. This topic matters to me greatly. You know, people loving where they work means retention, and we've got a big challenge on our hands. So I'm just going to dive into this hour that we have together. And Randall, you're going to be putting out some polls for us, correct? When will those go out?
Yes, that's correct. Whenever you're ready, Deidre, just give me
a thumbs
up and I'll shoot them out.
Okay. So sorry, the slide problem here. So we've got 4 polls. We've got an hour of content, and yet I'm super interested in being engaged. So feel free to use chat. Randall, help me throw out questions and interrupt. It's all good. We're here together. I have a lot of data. I have a lot of answers for you. And most of all, I want to get you in tune with the problem and how serious it is. I shouldn't say most of all. I want to do both. Anyhow, I'm from Irvine, California, everybody. I just thought it's always nice to know that about who you're talking to. My background is in criminal justice and sociology. I am sitting right now in New England, and I live by coastal between the New England, New Hampshire, and San Francisco these days. I just want you to know my background for 1 second here in looking at this, to say that I worked these first 3 companies before founding my own companies. I worked for the same 2 serial entrepreneurial men across Motion, Rapid7, and Percussion, owners of those companies. And so not only does my data come from me being in the business that I'm in, it also comes from a perspective of having something different than most people, which is working on a team that feels inclusive consistently over time and develops and trains people to success in many organizations, never mind one, working for the same people. So anyhow, they retired and left me, and hence CyberSN was born of my love from the people I met at Rapid7. They really speak to my, my background of social service. And also I really enjoyed my era of staffing, which was pre-digital. So I'm in my 50s now and started in this business in my early 90s, and then went into the software business for 10 years after 13 years of staffing. So just know that I come from building bigger teams. I come from cultures that have high success, and I come from really seeing this problem that we have in talent at scale. And so here's my abstract that I sent, and if you hadn't had a chance to read it, I'm not going to make you read it. I really, this is super meaningful. We all have done a great job at transforming the view into our cyber supply chain risks. And like we've done for years and years and years, as you can see, what I'm calling out here is that we've left out a portion of that conversation, and that's us. That's us people. And because we've left that out, we have a national security issue in job happiness. We have an issue finding and connecting ourselves to jobs, which creates job unhappiness as much as emotional intelligence skills do. And so since the day I started CyberSN, my brain has been in a taxonomy, because matching people to jobs is such a problem. And that taxonomy bleeds into the supply chain and the risk. The minute I got into it, actually. So I've been out talking about this for many years at all the big conferences in different ways to different audiences. And so as I said, Randall, help me out and feel free to jump in at any time and, bring anything up. So let's get in this. I figured no better data to use than ISACA data. I use it a lot. Looks like my screen's a little messed up, but I really start here because when I think about the supply chain of us and people and talent, which will always be needed, never going to go away. We're in a shortage. We're in a shortage of trained professionals. We're in a shortage of diverse professionals. Our attackers are diverse. We're not, there's a lot going on there that is just a part of how things go when new industries are born. And then there's this whole other part that's on your screen right now that says, wait a minute, we've got high levels of turnover. And here's the reasons. And we're going to go through these because there's some interesting points here. And the data is not getting better. In fact, I've got more recent data than this, and from my agency that I'm going to share in a minute. And what are we doing about it? And I'm feeling like I need to continue to bring this conversation to the table because we have to figure this out. Capitalism in today's society says that we probably won't figure it out. And yet I know that when humans have information and it's meaningful and makes sense, that we can create great change. So let's think that way. Here's what's going on. So average chief information security officers staying in their job about 18 months, takes about a year to find a new job if you're at that level. So that means that 8 months in, there's a lot of unhappiness and job searching is starting. And so if that's at the top, we know what happens below. Our mid-level people and our juniors stick around a little bit longer, maybe 2 years, a little bit over. And that's mostly because there's a level of wanting to make it work and hoping that things will work out before they start to look. And so we know these are the stats, and we know that they're not getting better, that COVID gave us the great resignation and gave us remote work. And so we've got challenges there, but let's look in this, why people are leaving overall. And so, this poor financial incentives is an interesting one because, a year ago, I'd say, no, that's not going on. And what's happening, and I'm going to get to the first one in a second, but what I'm seeing now is organizations bringing us on to do consulting work around salaries because there's such a problem with the people that are employed in the organization's salaries versus the people that they're interviewing and wanting to hire and not being able to hire them. And so because of that, and yet the data that they're buying from these big firms is telling them that they're paying their employees correctly. Those are literally incoming calls that are happening from big corporations to me saying, you must have better data because this data isn't making sense. And so now, that is happening. The demand divide has become so significant that people do know that more people are making more money, and they are starting to call because of that. That is super new. In fact, if you look at what's the number one reason here, which it says 59% of those people, or of these people, are saying a recruiter called me, and so I encourage us all to recognize that, and I think about this from my own teammates, is that if somebody answers a recruiting call, then anything on this list underneath is the reason, meaning we get them all day long, all of us. And there's a reason why we respond at any given time to one. And the minute we respond to one, we are opening a door to our hearts and to our feelings and to our emotions that will be hard to close again. And so if we look at high work stress levels, lack of management support, poor work cultures, limited remote work possibilities, right? If you just go down this list, these are the reasons. They all fall under emotional intelligence management, and they also fall under budget issues, hiring issues. And so, what I want us to really get in tune with here as I get into some solutions for us is that, it's impossible to say that it's because of a recruiting call. Of course, we need recruiters to find employment, and recruiters are the sort of front line to employment, good or bad. And yet that's not what opened the armor, as I call it. There's the chink in the armor. The armor had a spot that can be opened, and it's because of these things. So people want to be promoted, they want to grow, they want to develop. People want to feel like they're on a team that supports them. People want work cultures that are positive and uplifting. I mean, this is normal, right? So when we look at this data and we say, gosh, like I don't need to have this data say 2022 or, because it's the same data. It's not changing in terms of this 64% of respondents say their security teams are being forced to do more with less. That's still happening. That hasn't changed. In fact, I feel, and I'll know this data because it's just coming to me as in terms of how I'm feeling it in these last couple of months, and I get my data quarterly. I know of 2 people that, started a job and felt like they weren't mentally stable enough to really give it and you're talking high credential people. Of course, they have enough money not to work. I mean, let's acknowledge that, particularly, 2 family incomes, who knows what somebody's background is. I mean, you all skilled professionals don't have to work, some of you, right? And so these people are feeling mentally so drained that I'm hearing about this at this level of accepting, starting, and then just feeling like I need some time off. Never mind all the things we've been hearing for a long time that got worse during COVID as you all started to support people at home and all the other attacks that came from remote work and everything else. So I want us all to recognize that we all want the same things. And if we all want the same things, then, we can create work environments that are better. So I'm just going to give you a little bit more of the yucky data, and then I'm going to get into solutions. I promise that I can help as well. So this is data I put together for the Wall Street Journal not too long ago. And it was right when things started to, go remote, or right after things went remote. And the main reason I'm pointing this out again is that burnout data. That burnout data in the last 2 years has significantly jumped to the top. It used to be that a professional that would talk to us was looking, first thing out of their mouths was career, opportunity, training. Nobody even had training budgets, back when we started. Never mind the support of going to training and being in training and all those things. And that's still like top 3 today. But never was the first thing out of somebody's mouth burnout until these last few years, and never has it been as I'm feeling in these last even 3 months as aware. So nor was it something in the top 3. It was kind of like number 4. And by the way, I'm really getting burned out with the lack of amount of teammates that I have, the fact that we can't retain or hire, right, like that kind of conversation. But it was after I want my career to accelerate, and I want growth, and I want opportunity, or I'm working in a place where the culture is poor. It doesn't feel good. I got to get out. So anyhow, we also saw this, interesting discrepancy between East and West. We're still seeing it today. Now it's come, the real discrepancies around remote work and not remote work. We're definitely seeing the West Coast allowing remote work, where the East Coast is moving into a minimum of 4 days in the office at the masses, not everybody, at the masses level. And that's of course adding a lot more challenge for everybody. The interesting piece is that the West Coast wants West Coast or central hours in the United States. And so that does help the East Coast with the talent, because if the West Coast was willing to do the hours, I would say East Coast, we've got some real challenges. Okay. So when we think about our talent, we think about the unhappiness level, the care that, that isn't happening, we got to really own that. We got to really get that. We got to make solutions to that. And then here's another piece of this. And when Randall introduced me, he shared that my goal is to transform job searching and matching. Absolutely. When I founded my firm after leaving staffing through the digital era and I came back, I couldn't believe it. It's a nightmare. And it's causing lots of unhappiness, this job searching piece. And this is where documentation to solving our problem really needs to occur, meaning, job searching's poor because we're matching yucky content to yucky content, garbage content to garbage content, keep the words going up, and it's that bad where we can put an SH in front of it. This poor content plus SEO and plus, job seekers can never really see all jobs at one time. We've got this, fragmented environment that's causing people to, in their subconsciouses, settle because of what I was talking to you about before, which is, once that chink in that armor is open, that means the commitment's kind of questioned. And my commitment to my team, my commitment to my company, it's being questioned. Nobody likes that. It's a terrible feeling. And so once that starts, one wants to get out of that as fast as possible. So making decisions, companies making offers, and not really understanding the jobs is sort of high on the list. So Randall, let's put a couple of those polls out. Let's pause here for a minute. I've shared about we've got too much retention issues going on. I'm getting into some solutions which really gets into job descriptions are a great way to get common language, baselining, what's everybody doing, how can I grow people, and job descriptions cause a lot of problems. So I know there's a couple of polls about this. Do you mind sharing those now? All right, so what do you see as the largest risk in your supply chain? Oh, I'm supposed to start there. So let's start there. I assumed you'd all put people, but let's do that first. I should have started there. Polls or something. I gotta remember more. But let's start there. And then the second poll, let's just put the first three out there because they're going to be a big part of my conversation moving forward, Randall, if that's possible. But first thing I wanted to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Deirdre, sorry, I can't put all of them together, so I'll have to close one and then we'll have to do it in sequence. So just for CPE purposes, I'm going to keep this one maybe a couple more seconds. For
No worries. And then you'll give us the answers. I get it.
Yes.
I get it. Nice to meet you. Voice of the sky. Voice in the Zoom sky helping me out. I can't wait to see this answer. What do we got? People, 70%. Yeah. Isn't it wild? It's like, we all know it, and yet what do we, we feel helpless. I know this. I talk to you all a lot. You don't have to feel helpless. I guarantee you there are solutions. And I plan on being a big part of solving them with technology as well as my words. So let's get into that second one, if you don't mind, because what I'm about to get into is this, we're all about documentation. We're all about policies, procedures, those types of things. And I firmly believe the job description can really act like such a framework that we can change the game pretty significantly, pretty quickly. So what percentage of you have interviewed for a new position that ended up being different from what it was advertised, just in the job posting, not and the interviewing process, not taking the job? We got that question coming next, but what is it been 100% of the time that you've responded to a job ad, you're talking to somebody at that organization, and you find out the job isn't anything like the job, or not even close, doesn't matter, but it's not the job. You know what I mean? That's what I want to know. Let's take a few minutes to answer that. And while you're doing that, I'll just say again that, I was shocked leaving the staffing business for 10 years during the digital era and coming back to see so clearly, so quickly what had happened, before the digital era, to post a job in the Sunday newspaper, which is all we had in our rolled up fax resumes, was $5,000 for a little paragraph like this big, everybody. Like, seriously, like, that's how much content space I had to use, and $5,000. So the job description mattered. It mattered greatly, because if people didn't respond, then the only other option I had was the phone book and digging through organizations. And I can tell you that we used that, but it certainly wasn't as effective. Okay, so 3%, 100% of the time, gosh, even 1% is too high. Over 50% of the time is 48% of us. Wild, right? That means you all have jobs and families, and you're overworked already. You're stressed out if you have to be even job searching and applying to something. It's not fun. And your company's counting on you for things. And all of this is going on. And 50% of the time that you take after that time you took to apply is wrong, or 48% is a wrong fit. Wild. How much time is being wasted? How much time is the company wasting? So I saw that as clear as day when I first started the company. I couldn't make matches. I hired my talent right away. I build large scale teams. And so I again, noticed this instantly. That's when I went looking for a taxonomy, a cybersecurity taxonomy to change this game. And luckily I found our chief security officer, who's been with me for almost 7 years now. And we built a taxonomy, and it was an internal application, and now it's a platform, and you all can use it to build job descriptions for free. But my point of sharing this is to say that without a taxonomy on clear roles and responsibilities and who's doing what, that's common language for us all, we are not going to get past this statistic that you see here. We've got internal recruiting and HR departments struggling to fill our roles. And we've invested a lot of money in those departments therefore we want to utilize them. We don't want to go to a staffing agency like me, because we have all these resources, but they don't speak cybersecurity, and how is that going to work? And right. And so we've got all this upset in not being able to communicate what jobs are without being some cyber SME. And I'm not a cyber SME. I mean, I've certainly become one, but like, I didn't need to be one to recruit in the old days. And I sure as heck can't think it would be affordable or possible for all recruiters to be cyber SMEs. And so in my brain, it went, into this taxonomy. And so I'm going to share more about that taxonomy in a minute. But before I do that, and time is of the essence, I want to make darn sure that I share with you all that and you're going to see the taxonomy as a part of this, workforce development policy. I first rolled this out I think it was RSA. It's been 5 years at least by now. I bring it a lot to these conversations to say, okay, so if there's this problem, we're going to do something about it. And anybody who's a manager's got to care, and they've got to institutionalize a workforce development policy. And by doing so, you will be able to retain, and we'll talk through this. So what do I mean by that? I'm talking about applying the same methodology that we apply to our tech and hardware and our software into humans. So identifying, this taxonomy will be a big part of, backup, monitor, update. I'm using the language that has been around us all for a long time on the sort of tech side to say, hey, it's okay. You can think like this about humans. It's nothing wrong. It's a care program. What's your care program for people? And I've defined them. So if the first thing about caring for people is to make sure that everybody understands what everybody does. and to have that documented and to create measurable agreements around the tasks and projects. So I just said to you, 48% of you interview at companies and it's the wrong position. That means that job description, which is supposed to be, used to be back in the day when it cost $5,000 to run a job ad on a Sunday paper that only got to see on Sunday, and then it was trash, right? And now it's a couple $100 and it lasts forever, yeah, a month. And so is to say, you know, those measurable agreements are the job description. And right now, if everybody's cutting and pasting everybody's stuff, well, and you're all running a million miles a minute, protecting your organization's understaffed, how could you possibly even create this in my mind? I'm thinking, which is why I gave it free to you all. Like, baseline it, start here, create job descriptions that make sense with a common language taxonomy that follows NIST and NICE, which it does everything but Intel, and then document. Now I do this for all roles in my organization. It's a lot of work. Sometimes we err, sometimes we're behind it a couple of months, but we're pretty much on it. And the idea is to constantly update this, right? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So we identify who we've got, what they do in a taxonomy, common language, speaks like we speak for all functional roles. By the way, we defined 10 categories, 45 functional roles. I'm going to show it to you in a minute, but like you're doing that for everybody. And then you're saying you have a plan for a loss of talent, because everybody's going to lose talent, even at the best managers, for things that are not in your control, and you're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes as good as I know I am. I make mistakes. You know that, and have your backup plans. Who are you going to go to? Who's ready? How are you going to do that? Because let me tell you, like, people are burnt out because there's not enough people helping. And so every time you lose somebody, you're just making that worse. It's or not you're making that, but it's getting worse for those there. And the longer that goes on, the more receptible they are to those recruiting calls that are coming every day, all day. So have a plan, have temporary plan, have your staffing partners plans for contract, for perm, for consulting. You want to be able to use whatever you need, depending on CapEx or OpEx, depending on what you're dealing with in general, the type of role, how long will you need it? Maybe you don't need it for as long as a perm person. You know, these are the things to have your resources of where you go for that support ready to go, because the last thing we want to be doing, even when we're doing our pretty darn good job at managing, is we're going to lose somebody, is not being prepared. And then now we're stressing our already most likely stressed team more. You know, monitoring is a job. And so as you see in our job descriptions, beyond the taxonomy, is what's a percentage of time that one is spending managing people if they're a manager? Because managing people means that these 7 things have to be a constant focus. There's a plan. We're in conversations. We're breaking bread, whether it be over Zoom or in person. We are having conversations to check in on how somebody is doing. This is so important. And again, I've been talking about this for so many years that I finally got myself to a place of like, oh, wow, everybody wants to be doing these things, but they don't really have the time or the expertise to create a consistent training program for every person in all their different roles of cybersecurity on their team. And so as I've watched the money finally be there, but not the time or the even ability to do it, we just recently launched retention as a service to support that being done. I'm super excited. I'm going to be involved in the first ones because I just thought I created this solution. But my point is, the job is of retention is to be in this conversation. How are they feeling? Do they have the correct measurable agreements for their role and their responsibilities? Is it cleared? Again, having it written down and documented. Are they feeling, you know, that they're doing well with you know, the team and how people are interacting. Is it feel positive? Do they have a career path? Their training plans? Where are they at with their raise and their next you know, raise? So this is work. And so if you're a manager, you have to have time in your job description allocated to doing this work. And that's monitoring. That's being in tune with what's happening so that you can avoid retention issues. And so how much time depends on how many people. And you got to make sure that the culture of the company understands this, and certainly whoever we report to as managers, because this is like, it's a large portion of one's time to care for other humans. This is not 10%. Even if you have 2 people, it's not 10%. So super critical. And, you know, I specifically pull out this updating piece. You know, I know that we talked about monitoring training. We talked about how important it is, but like, it's so important that it has to be pulled out, meaning humans want their brains challenged. It's normal to want that. And when we don't get it, you know, that causes us to not enjoy life, and many things come from that after that. And so we've got to invest in people. We got to understand it's not 1 degree. It's not a cert, you know. It used to be that it's kind of like you send somebody to 1 cert a year and everybody felt like that was enough. And people want more. People also want, you know, EQ training, emotional intelligence training, which one of those things is win-win communication. I have a whole training that I do of many skills in emotional intelligence and win-win, and making and managing measurable agreements, and dealing with conflict, and lean language. And these are the things that lots of people want to learn about. Never mind the hard skills stuff that falls under every domain. And so you really got to be in this conversation, and if you are, people, well, why would they leave? There's so much risk to going somewhere that doesn't have any of these things, or isn't talking about these things. I mean, in general, all of us humans are just happy to be in the conversation. It doesn't have to all be planned out. It doesn't have to be exact science, but if the conversation is real and it's consistent and there's forward motion, movement into positive directions of giving these things and helping people, you know, grow themselves, then people generally don't leave. And so I'm going to wrap this up in a bow to say, well, what will get in your way of doing this? Meaning, I'm sure people say, this sounds so lovely. And yet, how is it possible? How am I going to get the time? Now, I'm sorry to call us all out on this, because I think at any given time in my career, I'm sure I've said or thought, and thought this, I might not have said these things, but I know from being a manager that is teaching other these things, that these are the things that I hear about. And excuses or myths, what are they? People love the one, well, if I train them, they will leave. Well, if we've all heard them, well, if you don't, they're going to stay. Meaning this stuff, this train we're all on, it's moving every day. So people aren't leaving because you train them. They're leaving because you don't have something to use that training with, or the culture isn't a place that they're enjoying, and somebody showed them a culture in their interviewing process that gives them more joy. And so I get that not all of us, nor me at any given time, definitely has a career path past a certain amount of time, and that's a truth. And so what I would encourage us all just to be okay with that, and to be in that conversation such that we're so ahead of it that if we see somebody we know we're not going to have what they need in 6 months as a role, or a year in a role, that we could work out a deal where they interview while we interview and they help us replace them. I mean, these are the types of conversations that when we run organizations with good focus on humans and the care of them that actually can happen in work and are very productive. I hold myself to these types of cultures, and I know it's possible. I'm not saying it's easy. I know that there's other people to sell in our organizations above us to allow this to happen. And yet we put people in space and on the moon and autonomous cars and all these things. It's like, to me, like, this is the easy stuff. Oh my gosh. And yet I get it. There's not a lot of training, you know, how do we have these win-win conversations? I know. And I'm certainly here to help. I know others are too. And together, if we don't give up, we can, right? We can create a place that's better. All right. Before I move into this next piece, which is to say, let's get back to this identification piece. Let me check in. Randall, you got anything for me? And let's do another poll.
Looks like the Q&A is clear and the poll just launched. So please, everyone, answer that.
All right. How many times have you started a new position? So this is started, not interviewed, a new position, and then started the job and realized it's not what you told the job would be? That's the question, right? We already identified how high it is at the you know, just applying and talking to people when we for a first interview at 48% of the time that's happening. Unfortunately, my guess is that it's pretty high even here, maybe even if it's just a little bit different enough to make you question, should you have taken the job? And that's the problem, right? That's the armor. That's the chink in the armor. Like, if I'm going to question my job, did I make the right decision? Shoot, should I have gone? Is the grass really greener? You know, like beating myself up. That's the chink. Never mind. That's all in my own head, created by myself. Goodness knows who I'm interacting with in the, you know, my job that is either turning the lights on or off when they talk to me, meaning like being positive or negative. And that's just going to add to that even more stress and that. And then boom, the LinkedIn message comes, the post comes that they decide to go search a job at cybersn.com, where we have every job posted in the last 45 days and kept real time and in this taxonomy and this, you know, setup here. I mean, it's going to happen, right? So holy moly, right? Look at the answers. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because I know the anguish that happens with that. And so I encourage us all to, while we're out there interviewing, create the job description with the organization. Share your screen, use our tool to prepare before you go, our platform, excuse me, you know, do everything that you need to do to make that job description, to help them help you. Another trick to doing that is always ask a question when you're answering a question. So I know what's happening. You're in these interviews. First of all, you're not going to do this with the recruiters, by the way. That's not who I'm talking about. When you get to that hiring manager, that is the conversation where your job in that call is to figure out what that hiring manager really needs, because that hiring manager hasn't had the time found the resources to create the job description, and who knows where it came from and who added to it when it went through the HR process. So you have whatever job they gave you with you, and you use, you know, other support, and you create a job description. And by answering a question with a question, answer the question they gave you, give a question back that's about this job. And I'll tell you one other thing that it'll really help with. Is imposter syndrome, or beating ourselves up because somebody turned us down, you know, or feeling bad that somebody turned us down. I bet that the majority of the time that any one of you have been turned down for a job, that you didn't know the job description enough to even know if you were qualified, and nor did they. And just by the rejection, it's natural that we think that we weren't qualified. That's not the case. It was probably the wrong fit, or if it wasn't the wrong fit and, their interviewing process was terrible, well, thank goodness they kept you from going to work somewhere. So my point is there's so much disruption in just not having job descriptions in a common language. It's wild. It's wild. So what we did 6 years ago when we first broke this down, it was, gosh, this 5 categories. I don't even know anymore, 20 roles. Today we're at 10 and 45. We update in the new year all the time, unless there's a reason to update sooner. I will tell you that, we can't separate sales and marketing from who we all are. It's whether you're in a product company or you're in InfoSec organization, that business is so clearly tied to security, meaning my chief security officer is right next to me and all my strategy, because I need that guidance. And so does everybody else. So they need to play with us. And of course, in product companies, they need to play with us. You're also interacting with them as vendors. You're interacting them as sales engineers. And so we're part of one ecosystem. And that's how I look at it. And certainly how I need to think in order to service organizations. So defense is highlighted here, 13 functional roles. You get the gist. If you click on any of them, you'll see them. Now, let's look at what a common language taxonomy looks like. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I want you all to utilize and just make this so much easier for finding work, working at your current jobs, all these things. So what is an application security engineer to one company, to another, to another? I can tell you there's at least 23 different profiles. No joke. I mean, that's how much I think about this stuff. I, again, remember when I founded my firm 8 years ago, all of a sudden I couldn't make matches. Like we were not able to do it. So that's because it'd be like, wait a minute, for this company, this application security engineer meant this, and it meant this for this and this for that. And it's like, oh my gosh, I need a common language. And here we go. So what's super important here, and this is just created by yes or no, are they going to do these things or not do these things? Super easy. Wonderful. But what's also super important is the percentage of time. So I talked about it as a manager job description. This is an application security. It doesn't matter what job description, what percentage of time are they doing these tasks and these projects? Because somebody that's doing 80% of what we can see here, these AppSec tasks and projects, that job being 80% today, if somebody has only spent 20% of their time doing that for a year, are they going to think they're qualified for this? I don't know, but that's the conversation I want them having in their brain, because I want you all to be able to look at a job description and be like, am I qualified or am I interested? In just like your mobile view. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard, qualified and interested. So you might be qualified, but you're not interested based on the percentages. Or maybe you're qualified and you're not interested based on some other things that we have here that are just important. They're not necessarily the taxonomy, but we also know that salary is a big piece of this, location, so forth and so forth. And so if we're going to stop this madness, the first thing we got to do is we got to use a taxonomy in our job descriptions, and we got to use that same taxonomy in our profiles, which you'll see you can make a profile, you can export it, you can do the same thing. I use that to make matches for my clients, whether we do full service, half service, qualified and interested, or the whole thing. Doesn't matter to me. I want to help everybody out solve this and automate the hell out of it, which is what we're doing. At the end of the day, if profiles, AKA resumes, I like profiles because resumes were created by Da Vinci back that long ago. That's how ancient they are, and they have no real meaning for us today. And job descriptions, if we're using the same taxonomy and the matching is behind the scenes taking advantage of this taxonomy, then we can get rid of that noise of how many of us are interviewing all the time, wrong time, wasting time. I mean, how many hours would we have back in our life not talking to people where it wasn't a fit? How many hours would we have back in our lives if we didn't take a job where we thought the job was one way and then it was another, and all the mental anguish and disappointment and mental beatings of ourselves in our brains, like, could we have back to just joy and calmness? That's what I want. Again, I worked for 2 guys for 21 years and I love them. Thousands of us did. I'm so grateful for them to give me something different than what I see out in society, which is why I'm out here doing what I'm doing. So I want you all to recognize that not only can we solve that, you know, that noise of searching and matching to jobs with this, we can also solve staying on the same page as our jobs evolve. Imagine updating this every 90 days. Why not? First of all, it's free. Second of all, it works. My clients do it all the time. I do it. Update, stay on the same page, use this to get funding for jobs, use this for human resources, like stay on the common language of what people are doing, right? All right, let's get to our last poll here. As I say to you all, training is opportunity, and I want to show you some career data that will help out. So I'm saying, here's the poll. How often do you perform cyber organization assessments or take part in assessments of your cyber roles, responsibilities, and capabilities? I'm saying my human hygiene model makes this a part of your assessments. I want it a part of your assessments. I'd like to see it governed, meaning roles, responsibilities governed. And my gut says that we're probably not doing this because I see it at scale. And again, this isn't about blame. I mean, holy cow, without even having the support of the job building technology, who's got all the expertise, the time, to map it so succinctly. So it's not about blame, and yet I'm pretty darn sure that we're going to get a lot of nevers here. So while we're getting that, I know that our intentions are to retain people. I shared earlier that training is definitely, one of the number one things. I want you to know that we have mapped cybersecurity roles in the Career Center for all 45 functions. And it's super powerful, and it can help you a lot in being in the conversation, sharing your screen, being in a conversation with your teammates, and what they're thinking about for their next role. I know that this has been really, really helpful, and I want to make it even more helpful, which is why we created the RAS model, retention as a service model, where we can really also support in this conversation. So anyhow, what do we got for an answer here? I'm dying to know.
Yeah, everybody, this is the last polling question for this session. So if you haven't responded at least to 3, please make sure you respond to this one, because you have to have 3 polling questions answers to get your CP.
That's right. That's right. I think about documentation and where we put this information a lot. Oh, wow. Interesting. Better than I thought, which is fantastic. So we've got quarterly 10%. I didn't think we'd have any quarterly. Wow, whoever you all are that are doing this, please hook up with me. I'd love to know and talk to you and hear about how things work for you. And we've got a few minutes here at the end, so if anybody wants to chat and share their experiences with doing this and how it's been, what's the success rate. But never is a lot lower than I thought, which is great news. And still 37%, right? So 37% of us need to enter this conversation, and the rest of us need to look at, we're in the conversation, are we in it enough? And what's it like when we're in it? Is it working? Is it helpful? Is this productive time? Those are things I'd love to hear about. And moving into my last slide here, I'd love to open up chat if anybody wants to share or start a conversation on any of this, but I mentioned EQ a few times, so I like to wrap with it. I do talks that's just about this and the skills within them, and you can find on YouTube. It's really important for us to all understand that this isn't a debate about what's more important, IQ or EQ. They're both important. It's not a debate whatsoever. In fact, if we had to choose which one matters more, as long as the IQ is strong enough to participate in one's job, then EQ would absolutely weigh out more. There's a great study called Project Aristotle that Harvard and Google did that has just amazing data that says that managers with high EQ outperform the managers with lower EQ, and where IQ is pretty much the same. And so why is that? Because EQ really is about caring and thinking, wanting to think, that the brain spends a large part of time thinking about how others think, feel, and perceive. And together, those two things make our personality. And the most important thing I want to say to you is this: your IQ caps out when your brain fully develops. It's different for everybody in terms of age, but typically it's somewhere in our 20s and to mid 20s. Whereas our EQ can always develop. It is the gift that our brains have given us, that we can adopt more empathy, more caring traits if we choose to wake up our conscious mind to this concept. And I'll leave you with this to say that if you're feeling like, it doesn't necessarily matter, or maybe it doesn't show up enough to see as a problem, I can also tell you that the data shows that the people that are caring about EQ make more money. And I say that because, this is a capitalistic market that we work in. We're not changing it anytime soon. So we're all only have a certain amount of hours to work. You might as well make as much money as you can with that money, with that time, excuse me. And so higher EQ people are absolutely making more money. It's the number one thing that an employer has asked for from the beginning of time. Like, I want somebody with good communication skills. What is that if not EQ? It is, and there's a lot to EQ. And as I mentioned, I have a skills EQ tree. You can even find it on our website. It is that important. All right, so I've got 5 minutes left. And how are we doing, Randall, on any comments, questions, thoughts, or even yourself?
Sure. One question came in here. You said RAS, recruiting as a service. What do you think about retention as a service versus recruiting as a service?
If I said recruiting, I'm literally losing my mind. RAS is recruiting as a service. I mean, geez, Louise, retention as a service. That's why I said it. Wow, I can't believe I said recruiting. Probably because I use that word so much. RAS is retention as a service. It's what we've just sold to a couple of clients, first ones, where we are literally doing the job descriptions for everybody on the team, seeing how they're feeling about their job. Once we made the job description, what would they like to be doing, being in the career conversation with them, providing that information to the leadership, working to get those programs for each teammate. And these are 25 plus type, 25 to 30 people to support that program. And that is a subscription model that we stay in tune, as well as or a consulting model. So yes, excuse my apologies on recruiting as a service. We already, recruiting as a service has been around forever. Retention as a service. Yes, yes, yes. And by the way, people that hire from us, I have the data, I gave it to Wall Street Journal recently, that they're staying 3 times longer than the average professional. And I know it's because of the baselining on the job descriptions. And I know it's because we're in that conversation with the hiring manager, and we're in that conversation with every professional we submit. And I know it. So that's how much just that can change the game.